In this video, let us spend time on getting all the elements we have built so far kind of working well with each other. So heading to my background layer, I'm going to turn everything off, that is the lights and the peak layer. And let's go through the masks one at a time. Going to my color picker tool, I'm going to sample the color and check the color and hue between the cloud and the rocks. Now, for these two elements to live together, that is the background mountains and the sky, the hue needs to be the same. So, going on to my top curves layer here and adding one more on top. Let me go and select the rocks mask for the background. And I'm going to expand it by 1 pixel. So slightly increasing it than what we made in the mask. Then using a soft round brush tool and sampling colors from the image, I would just start painting on it. Similarly, continuing on with the left side, sampling colors from multiple places in the sky. Adding a little bit of the cyans from the sky as well, just slightly. Now this is bringing our mountain and our sky much closer to each other. Turning on my light layer and checking it out. I'm repeating the same on the rock mask for the lights layer. Again, sampling from multiple points in the sky and the lower layers. Now I'm switching between my top rocks layer and my rock mask layer on the shadow side. Just adjusting both so that they work well with each other. Again, sampling and painting into both these layers. Let's increase the opacity. Turn on our peak, midground, and the foreground as well. Now, toggling the foreground, we can see the difference between the midground and the foreground. So let me turn off the light side of the midground layer, turn off the shadow layer, and going into the rocks mask, I'm going to drag it up onto top of our stack for the shadow. And let's play with the opacity so that it feels right. Again, using a soft round brush, I'm just going to pick a slightly darker color and start painting in. And I'm very light on the pressure on my tablet. Alright, so next let's start balancing the foreground to the midground. So sampling the color of the rocks and starting to put that in. Again, sampling from various different spots. And slowly fading it to what we did before, that is over to the back side. Now we want this to transition from the foreground to the background. So let me pull my shadow layer and take it on top of my stack and start painting into it. Now we need to refine this shadow. And using a soft round brush, just adding a bit of reflected light on top of the glacier. tweaking that a bit. So adding another layer on top, let me sample the color of the snow on the background just to integrate that better with the end of the, or rather the top end of the section meeting the glacier. And then change the blending mode of that layer to color. Now we have already matched our values, so we can go ahead and just add a color layer on top. Now going over to the light side, and emphasizing the bounced sunlight. Now it needs to have a soft transition between the shadow area and the bounced light because of the profile of our mountain. So I'm going back and forth between my black and white colors and painting into the mask. Turning off my black and white globals and just adding some light touches to it. Now that's better. Now we need to continue working on this and integrate the foreground better with the midground. Now remember, since the foreground plate is locked, we can't make much changes to it, especially in color and values. So let's make our midground come closer to our foreground. So sampling the colors and going and painting into the rocks mask. Now since this mask only affects the rocks, the color is restricted only in that section. Let me turn my lighting layer on. Selecting my rocks mask. And I'm pressing Ctrl H on the keyboard to just hide the current selection. The selection is still active. So now that when I paint on it, only the area which is selected will be affected. And in this case, it is the rocks. So pressing Ctrl H again, it will show it. And let me invert it. Increasing the size of my brush and adding a softer touch to it. Now what this has done is the snow which is going up over onto the left side, I can control it and paint some light values onto it. That is indicate some bounce light. Let's toggle the foreground and see how that's looking. Let me deselect, adding a color balance layer on top. Let us add some cyan and blues. Let's balance both with each other. Turning off the light layer so we only see the shadow section. Going back to the channels, selecting my rocks mask, and now applying this, that is the inversion of that. I'm filling the rocks mask with black. So this color balance layer is only affecting the snow. Using a soft round brush and selecting the black color, I'm going to paint into the mask for the color balance. Now it's only affecting where I wanted to affect, that is only on that section of the snow. And on that section which is closer to our foreground. Turning back our lighting layer and just checking if everything is still looking good. We need to slightly tweak this. So in this lesson, we started on bringing all our elements into the same world. Now in the next lesson, let us continue doing the same and work on the barrier and the rest of the image.